Hello, welcome to another edition of Prove All Things. I want to thank everybody who's joining us today, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or X on the CGI Digital Network app, whether that's on your phone, tablet, or television, be that Roku, Apple TV, Google TV, or Amazon Fire TV. If you're watching any of those, we just welcome you to the program, and to everyone else who's watching or listening later. Thanks for joining us as well. I'm joined with co-host Mike James. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, Jeff, doing well. Good to see you this morning. How's everything in Georgia?
Everything is pretty good. I mean, we're looking at a potential like snow and ice this coming weekend, but with those type of things, we just really don't know in the South. It's I guess up north people they can predict it pretty well. In the South, it's always they're doing their best to let us know what might happen this weekend. We will see.
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess it's a little more unusual to happen in the South in the winter. So again, the predictions are who knows? Yeah,
Absolutely. How are things going out there?
things are good. The weather's great. We're getting about 70 degrees for the highs and 50s for the lows right now. So you can't beat the weather.
All right. And churches going well.
Yeah, we had a new visitor last week, so that's a great occurrence for us. And we had one the time before that, so that's texting me on a regular basis. So hopefully they'll keep coming.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, if you're out there and you're watching, we are pastors of churches. I'm pastor of the Atlanta congregation of CGI, and you're there in, I guess, Pasadena
Yeah, I
congregation,
live in
Los
Fontana, but
Angeles.
the church is in Pasadena. Yeah.
Yeah, Los Angeles congregation, and we welcome you to come visit us. You can definitely get more information about our church at cgi.org, where we have a list of all of our local churches out there. All right, we're going to go ahead and bring in our guest today, our third person on today's program, and is Blake Silverstein from
Hey
Tyler,
guys,
Texas. How you doing, Blake?
good. How are y'all?
Hey, good, Blake. Good to have you back. You seem to be towering over us today. So.
I'll stand back a little bit.
No, I'm just joking, man.
I'm looking down on you.
Yeah.
No, it's been better for my posture. Working with these desks that go up and you can stand up, and I'm getting old. I'm the old man now. I was at the chiropractor yesterday, and he was popping my back in ways that I never thought could be popped, and my neck and all this. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing, And you get to an age, I guess, where you sneeze wrong and ruins your whole week. So
I know that feeling very well, very well. Sneeze or like bend for something. It's like I need to reach something in my car, and I like it just throws everything out of whack.
I used to could do this. It's a Southernism, right? I used to could, uh, but I'm doing good. Good to see y'all, and thanks for having me back. I was looking at it, and it's been almost a year since I've been on the show.
Yeah,
It's been a while, and
yeah. You've been part of another show that we produce for the
yeah,
past year.
rooted in the Word.
Yeah,
The rooted word rather.
yeah.
So yeah,
Which was previously Armor of God, but we renamed it, and the new name will come out this week. I think the
oh,
rooted word is I think a better description of the program, and probably give us a lot better exposure with that name out there.
I think it's a great rebrand, and it's exactly like you said. There is a difference between what we're talking about and what the Armor God programs we're talking about, and just generally high level. There was more of about just it's just a kind of a different an application, I guess you could say. So but yeah, that's been a lot of fun with Ann and Anika. They're both really sharp and really awesome. So it's been a lot of fun. But yeah, been a year for this one. I still don't have my shirt. I see you guys with really cool shirts. Still don't see the
Yeah, but
mail.
maybe I need to make some rooted word shirts for y'all to wear.
That'd be cool. I'd be good with that.
Yeah.
But so last year, so CEM is celebrating its 30th year anniversary this year. So hey, hooray to that. The darts were really prolific, and a lot of the things that they produced are still going strong. Just had our board meeting, and we're doing well on most all the key performance metrics that we wanted to be. and growing, albeit slowly. It's slow and steady, so that's been good. Started a franchise business since the last time we spoke as well. Just wanted to make sure that I dispersed a lot of the financial requirements for the organization and stuff like this. There was, um, let's just say, you shouldn't be making a lot of money off the back of the church, in my estimation, right? I just don't think
Yeah.
that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And
We
Paul was a tent
we
maker.
certainly don't. We don't either.
Yeah, absolutely. Servants, right? And so, but I did need to kind of augment our income. And so, anyways, things have been good. And good to be back, and looking forward to seeing you guys coming up here on what is it? It's in March, right? March 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Yes. We'll be traveling. What we're having is a leadership conference for the ministry and training in the Tyler congregation. So me and Mike will be traveling there, and Blake will be
Good.
there since you are one of the elders at the CGI Tyler there, and hopefully we'll get as many people as we can to have a really good large conference. And when we do that, we're just doing things kind of looking toward the future of the Church of God International and those things. Just
Smart.
something to look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, it creates a little community inside the Church of God, right? Community is really also what we're talking about today in our my presentation is really the difference between a communal system, right? The collectivist society that the scriptures were written by and to. These folks were highly, integrated with one another, right? I'm not saying it's bad or it's good, but anything we can do to kind of increase the community and the churches of God, I'm all about it. So that'll be fun.
Hey, it sounds like your microphone's cutting in and out on us. Is there another microphone you can switch to?
Yeah. Let's see here. Maybe this might work a little better. How about now?
I think that sounds better. Yes.
Okay, cool. If I need to switch out to I got another one, a triple microphones around here, so we'll be all right.
All right.
There we go. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds
you go ahead. Sorry about that. Yeah. So let's go and get started, I guess. I sent you my notes, and I'll tell you why and how I started up with this topic. Basically, I'm just
gonna have to interrupt you, Blake. It's gonna probably be like a distraction for our people watching. You are cutting in and out with those microphones you're using there.
All right, let me change up
or something.
Okay,
maybe a wired microphone might work better.
Okay, I'm not missing anything, Jeff. Just so you know, but whatever you're hearing, I think others might be hearing. So
yeah, I'm hearing something that might be better if you have a wired connection.
I'd have to jump on my PC versus my my tablet, which is what I'm recording on right now. Okay. But you can hear just fine, Mike, I guess.
I haven't missed anything, Jeff. I haven't.
Your words are cutting in and out, but I guess we'll be okay with this as best we can. It's just kind of like you're dropping at the end of your words and stuff, but it's okay.
Okay. And I mean, I could take out both the headsets and see if the microphone on the tablet itself is sufficient. Do you want to do that and see if that works?
Do with the tablet and see how that works. That might be better.
Technology is so great, How about that? Does that
sounds a lot better. I'll just turn your audio up on this end so we can hear you really well.
Oh, sorry about that. But yeah, today I'm talking about honor and shame culture, which is scriptures, right? They were written by and to individuals who are part of a culture that's called honor and shame culture. This is very it's known. It's a thing, and academia and theology. Just to go look it up. Honor and shame culture versus innocence and guilt culture, which is what we have in the West. We have a system, a group of people who believe, and they're more interested in thinking about their whether that individually they're innocent or guilty. And I'll get into some examples here to kind of give you some examples of the difference between the two in a second. But I wanted to give you the reason why I'm talking about it. I heard recently Kirk Cameron was talking about eternal hell, right? He was talking about the immortality of the soul. So you guys did a program on it as well, and I did a good job with that. And really, what hit me was it was a
maybe an unintended consequence of moving from that kind of society and being concerned with honor and shame to this kind of innocent guilt culture is that in the background, we have a
Hey, Blake,
concern.
Blake, I hate to interrupt you again, but we are getting a lot of like weird sounds coming. So maybe you could switch to your PC and we could just wait a minute and kind of discuss amongst
Weird.
ourselves. Could you do that?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, give me like 5 minutes or so. I
Yeah,
can even talk to you while I'm setting it up. Go ahead.
what me and Jeff can do
Yes.
as we wait for you, Blake, is I'm just going to go to some of your notes and just address in general where you're going today. So as we wait for you there.
Yeah.
Sure, man.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna turn off this feed, and when your other feed comes in, we'll add you in there, Blake.
All right, sounds good.
All right.
Okay, Jeff. So I'm just going to take a look at Blake's notes here, and what he's going to do.
He didn't mention the thing about Kirk Cameron, so maybe we can give people like a little bit more background on what Kirk Cameron had discovered.
Yeah,
we did do a Armor of God web chat about that specific subject, where he has changed his view. I don't know if he's changed back or not. I don't know if he's any pressure, but at one podcast that he did, he had changed his view of that. He believes now that humans don't suffer eternally, as some believe in the idea of hell, that they are, as we believe, annihilated or just no longer exist at some point in the future. After a judgment, if they don't repent, if they don't turn to God, those are the incorrigible wicked, as we refer to them.
Right, exactly. And what Blake's going to do in addressing some of that today is, again, CGI and many of the churches of God are distinct because we don't believe in this idea of guilt-innocence, which relates to the eternal hell idea. That, hey, if you're guilty, you're immediately going to go to hell. If you're innocent, you're going to go to heaven. He's going to try to deal with this idea of shame and honor thousands of years ago and how it was different than this idea we have today of guilt versus innocence. So that's one aspect of what he's going to get into today. And when we think of the implications of this, we've got some modern implications where, you see a lot of this online today where people are blaming each other about this, that, or the other thing on online culture, Jeff. You've probably seen it where somebody in Facebook calls out somebody and says they did this or they did that and we need to shame them or whatever it may be. That's getting into this guilt that they're guilty or they're innocent based on what somebody else is saying. You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Let's see if Blake, can you hear us, Blake?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me? A little sound check.
That sounds 100% better. Somebody who was watching said it sounded like a hog barking. So I guess I just couldn't myself. I just couldn't listen to that sound the whole program, and I hate for anyone to tune away because they kept hearing that sound.
I hate to bring shame upon the Prove All Things name, and so no. If I had to venture a guess, I'd say that was a Skip Martin comment. But no, good job on covering the different, the Kirk Cameron thing that he did start to tumble to this idea that I think is something we all share, obviously, that there is there's an echo in here.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can turn up the audio on my computer.
Maybe turn off the iPad.
All right, there we go. Can you give me a sound check?
Yeah, that's a lot better.
All right, cool. So you said, why care about this? What don't we have better things to do? Didn't Jesus tell us exactly what to do? Don't worry about all this stuff about honor and shame versus innocent guilt. Well, there's that kind of stuff shapes how you look at the scriptures, right? It actually tells you what information in the scriptures is interesting, and so it basically describes to you how the scriptures are applied. And that affects how you behave, and so it's a big deal. And so when I saw Kirk talking about this idea, understand that there is no eternal hell, he was talking about some of the implications of that, the changing of the psyche of a person, a believer, when they go from this idea that God is going to eternally punish someone if they don't get to Jesus in this life, right? And that there is no post-mortem opportunity for salvation. It's one and done, I mean? And him saying things like, this really changes how people operate, how the Christian would operate, how they would, what they're worried about. And I started to think about this, people that were in this honor and shame culture are really worried about bringing honor to their family and avoiding shaming their family. And that's what they're concerned with. Where the middle, the Westerner would say that they're more interested about do they personally have a right to this thing, right? We're really big on rights in the West, which came from property, property rights, really, right? The idea of, that we have a set of, we own things, and so we had to figure out, how those things, how our rights intersect with one another.
I guess the capitalism of the West basically has influenced that.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, I think it's you can trace it through, especially post-Enlightenment ideas. Really did start to focus on the individual. You start to see societies becoming much more atomized, fragmented, an attempt to get very specific about what they are. So I think it was really, you break something down into its smallest parts to understand it better, people included. And so, what they did is they basically broke all these things down into very small pieces, and people use that same kind of treatment, unfortunately, on their relationship with God and their religion. They broke down their religion to the smallest parts to understand it more fundamentally. And you see this going on with the early church fathers, how they have started to think about these ideas of what God was asking for. There's an idea from some of the early church fathers that talked about Anselm's satisfaction theory. I don't know if you guys have read about this, but it was profoundly influencing the Western culture by providing a rational, justice-based explanation for the atonement, arguing Christ's death paid humans' humility debt of sin to honor God, and he's shifting the focus from an older ransom theory, laying the groundwork for penal substitution, which we've talked about, right? This is the idea that came before this idea that Christ's sacrifice, his atoning sacrifice, paid our debt, right? This came right before that, which was developed by John Calvin, and basically this makes it the foundation for a very, for what a modern evangelical, would kind of think about this as sin as a debt. Sin is seen as an offense against God's infinite justice and honor. Being, looking at restitution, meaning that we're interested about how we're going to pay back this thing, and Christ as a mediator. And there's this idea, cur Deus homo, which is basically why God became man, arguing that Christ's death was the only rational way to reconcile humanity and God. And so this basically is setting the groundwork, and eventually gets into ideas such as Pauline covenantal theology, right? Which is, it kind of it goes this span. And the reason why I lay that groundwork is because, again, they were talking about some of these things back then. And I'm kind of all over the place here. I just want to kind of go back to just kind of really making sure that we're crystal clear, that we had the society that was, during biblical times, was an honor and shame culture. They were a collectivist community, meaning they had a community. And if you want to go to that first slide, kind of help out here. This is even today too, as well. This is not, been done away with, right? You'll talk about an Eastern culture and a Western culture. And this is a map that shows the different types of culture worldwide, right? I believe this is actually in late 2000s. And so you see here, we're very interested in and worried about guilt here in the States, and Western countries, which you would call that, I'm sure, looking at that. Right. And then shame, shame culture. Any thoughts about this heat map here, guys?
You're making me think about some of the recent incidents in the news over the last few years where Pakistanis or Indian women coming to the West have been killed by a father or relative due to the fact that they wanted to marry someone within the Western culture. And because of, I think it's the shame aspect, for whatever reason, the father or a male family member has killed these women. Does this have something to do with this difference, Blake?
Yeah, let me provide a case for that. Why that would be good to kill your daughter, right? Why
I don't know if there is a case for that, but go ahead.
Well, no, I am going to make a case. This is what so because there is, and there's not a good case, I would say. And again, I'm not saying this is good or bad. Right. I'm not saying what we're doing in the West is bad. I'm just saying it's different. Right. I would say that shame is a powerful tool that God uses to bring a person to repentance authentically. Mm-hmm. So that is a tool that's been taken out of God's toolbox if we are going to become post-shame, like some people will say in the West. But let's
but are we? I think I just remember when I was younger, I think there was more shame in our country than there is now. The people
were not technically true to say that we're beyond shame. There are people who are part of a certain political ideology that really love to shame people. I realized a couple weeks ago, or about a week ago, I was like, wait, shame is still here in this culture. There's a lot of people who shame individuals. Shouldn't you know better about this person? There's still a lot of shame here. And so what I thought about is like, wait, it's still here in our culture. There's people who will shame us for not caring more about the environment. Let's say they shame us for not. So then I said, okay, it's not a difference between honor and shame culture and innocent guilt culture. It's really a difference between what we fear as a culture. Yeah. Are we worried about bringing shame on God's name, like they were in the East, or their family name, right? Their family, their God, not really ever really considering themselves. You'll see this in the scriptures. If you read it through, there's not really a lot of worrying about themselves individually. It's really about the community, Israel, God's people, his church, this idea of a collectivist, society. But back to the honor and shame killing that I think that you pointed out, what you said, okay, you want to go back to that, Blake? I'm like, no, wait. Yeah. But here's the thing. You probably didn't think about this. Back then, the community was so closely knit together that let's say you said this girl wanted to go off and marry a Westerner. Let's say that she was going to, that the father said, no, absolutely not. And, if you marry this person, not only are you out of the family, but you bring such disgrace upon our family's name that we would kill you, right? And that sounds awful. But what if you're not understanding how that would influence their relationship with the community? Let's say that person was a baker, and they also had a relationship with the farmer, who saw the daughter marrying this other guy. And because of that, he said, I'm not going to do business with your family ever again because you brought that Westerner in, that infidel into the home. And so he says, oh gosh, okay, I can't buy grain from this guy anymore. I'm going to go over here to this other farmer. He's like, yeah, I can give it to you, but it's going to be twice as much because your family is in shame, right? It's disgraced. Well, I can't afford that. Well, that's tough luck. And then you're not able to bring in what you used to bring in. So now your family can't eat. And now, let's say there's a famine, and now, someone's going to die because they don't have enough food. You follow this actually, maybe you think, oh, you're exaggerating. Well, no, this is how they're really leaning on one another in a very fragilely balanced system that was, so does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, it makes sense. We're not advocating this, of course, but Blake's trying to make sense of how to understand how someone could react in that particular way. If that was all you were learning growing up, if that was your mindset, you're stuck in that way of thinking about things. I think the Bible, when we get to the New Testament, is a little more egalitarian on some things. Yeah. But I understand that what you're saying about the shame and honor, definitely those aspects are in the Bible also. Yeah.
Well, we have in the law, right? We have in the law that adultery would bring upon a death penalty, I guess, upon the woman and the man called in adultery. And maybe I've always thought of it as a guilt thing, but now that you're saying that, there probably is that shame that adultery would have brought to the family, to the community in that penalty. We don't in the new covenant, we don't stone people for adultery, but this is something in the old covenant that was practiced, and maybe that's kind of something that's kind of the mindset maybe we see people, like you said, people from Pakistan or in the Middle East, that this is kind of that same mentality. Is it?
Yeah, I mean, well, if anything, it's just what's in the background of the scriptures that you're not picking up on.
Yeah.
That was basically part and parcel of their day-to-day life there in the East, the Middle East, right? That they had these issues that are mores, rather, that are basically the subtext, right? It's what's not being written, that they're not writing because they figure that you are basically aware of these things, that you understand them. And why would they go to pains to describe some of these things that, you should already know, right? Because you are a Middle Easterner. Like, why would we go off and describe why, how shame could really be a terrible thing? And so when you start to look at some of these things,
hey, somebody has a comment. I think they're maybe commenting about the adultery ring. Yes, it does, and it's still prevalent in our society. So we have adultery, we have fornication, we have a lot of things that in the Bible are shameful, right? But there's not that shame associated with it today, is there? In our society, fornication, people, they just act like it's normal. And
hey, let me give you guys a real good example that's come up in my larger family. Again, when we go back to my parents growing up, the idea of getting married was so central to getting together with a man and a woman. Right. So you come a couple generations later. So the kids of my cousins now, recently, a few of them began living with the person they eventually wanted to marry or were gonna marry. Mm-hmm. But it was a thing within the family where the older generation was talking about, oh my goodness, he's living with her. They aren't married yet. So the older generation definitely had that concept still there. They were talking about it, but the younger generation didn't even think about it. It was just like, well, this is what we do now. We're going to live together to see if this is going to work out, and then we'll get married. So I see that in this conversation. Do you guys get what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it depends on what you're worried about, and I think there needs to be a healthy amount of self-denial in service of something higher than ourselves, God's name. If you are called by my name, right? Hopefully we're called by his name, right? There's this idea of namesake, right? The tripartite name came usually from the Roman society, usually where they were trying to figure out, your name, right? What house are you from? And there was a patronage society, which was basically you had someone that you basically studied under, right? And you were a part of that relationship was also keeping, that in high, shame-free, right? Mm-hmm. We used to have this thing that we would say, have you no shame? Yes. It's a good one. We should bring it back, by the way. There is sometimes the correct reaction to something that you've messed up is shame. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to say it. Today, the therapist will tell you it's everyone else's fault except for yourself. Right. They always say, what? It's your parents' fault. It's not your fault. It's their fault. They raised you incorrectly. Your brain's got a different chemical. You're pointing their finger at everything except for the mirror. Right. And you see in the scriptures, God, is not, he seems to be working in a different system at least with the Israelites for sure. Mm-hmm. And Jeff, back to what you're talking about, the adultery thing.
Yes.
We actually I said, remember, understanding this kind of difference between our cultures would help you to understand the scriptures better. What do I mean by that? Well, we think the story of David and Bathsheba is all about adultery. I mean, you'd ask, 99 out of 100, you ask people, what's the story of David and Bathsheba about here in the West? And they would tell you infidelity, right? Sexual immorality.
Yes.
And it's not. It's not. That's a footnote. I mean, it's a part of it. But
so explain that a little, Blake. Yeah.
I mean, even really starts off the whole chapter, 2 Samuel, where it says, in the springtime when kings go off to war, right? David was back at the temple, right? It's like, wait, why isn't David off at war while kings go out to do? It's like letting you know right there in the beginning, David's not where he's supposed to be. And so
he wasn't with his men on the line.
He wasn't with his men on the line, right? He sent his generals and sent everyone else. He's hanging back and eating grapes in my mind, and all of a sudden he notices what? Notices a woman that's bathing. It's nice to look at. Asks his, his guard, who is this? And he says, isn't this the daughter of Sheba, which is what her name means, by the way. Bathsheba means, we literally don't even get her name, from what I understand. You get it, and her name is in there, I think, twice or 3 times. So she's like a footnote. And, the idea that through this, we're kind of missing out on these details about honor and shame. Even the guard's response to David, isn't this kind of forming in the form of a question to so that he saves face, right? Oh, he's like, oh, yes, that's right. It's the daughter of Sheba, yes. That kind of, there's all those things happening that we see. Remember Uriah? He comes back, and he seems to be acting so honorable, doesn't he? That juxtaposition between those two individuals. He's like, no, I can't go out there with, and sleep with my wife. When the men are out there, and the ark of God is, in a tent. Are you kidding me? I can't.
He was showing what David should have been doing.
I think that juxtaposition that they put them side by side, right? They're two behaviors to notice them. That David's behavior comes very pronounced. That he's like considered the duplicitous actions. Now he's like men to the front line, and and he's completely. You notice it kind of starts to spiral, right? It starts to like one line turns into covering up the other, and there's all of a sudden you get this whole thing where there's all these things he's doing now to kind of cover it up, and the famous moment, which is with Nathan, and he tells him, "Hey, you are the man," after this parable, and that was a public account, by the way. It's in front of everyone, and he has a moment that at that time, whenever he points at him and says that, he can either A, honor and publicly humble himself, or B, David could have been like, guards, come get this guy. He was within his right as a Mediterranean king, right? He could have just had Nathan taken off and killed, and that would have been not a good look, obviously, but he could have imprisoned him. There's all kinds of things, but he didn't. He did, and he says in Psalm 51, he says, "Against you, God alone, have I sinned." Wait. What about Uriah? What about the guys that are on the front line that died because you wanted to have this other woman? You could have all these other sheep. You chose that one. It's about David trying to save faith through the whole story, as far as I'm concerned. He's constantly trying. Remember, he's trying to bribe them, and this is for the ancient reader. They would have been seeing him trying to restore honor to the house, to God's name, is what's going on here. And again, he could have had any woman he wanted, right? And again, as a Mediterranean king back then, he could have taken any woman. Not this one though. This one is it's a wife, right?
Let me ask you something, Blake. Are you saying something you said there? Are you saying that David said that because he understood that as a follower of the YHWH or the YHVH, he was bringing dishonor on God's name because he was under God's name in a sense, and therefore his actions, even though they were harmful to other people, ultimately the most important relationship was with God. Therefore, he was dishonoring God through his actions. Is that what you're getting at?
I think he tumbled to that. That's the same individual that took on Goliath for who is this man who's like besmirching the nation, this name, our name. Who is this? And that kind of individual holds God's name in high regard. And especially you want to notice in the scriptures where something is taking place. Is it public? Is it private? This will show you some of their motivations. But yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
So you were saying Goliath was trying to bring dishonor to the name, and when he killed him, he was bringing honor. He was doing the noble things at that point. So. And there's a juxtaposition with that David, with the David we now find, who's they're out the war, he's back, like you said, eating grapes or whatever, watching women on the from his castle or whatever, and doing things he shouldn't do. So there is that he was acting very dishonorable in all of that. And and again, maybe we don't see that. I don't think I saw that until you said that. I was just thinking more of the adultery
You
thing.
read the story.
There's all these other
Literally all
things
about
he
this.
was
It's
doing.
not about the sex at all. I mean,
Yeah.
because we're so sexualized in the West that we hone in on that detail immediately. Like, see, it's about this thing.
Yeah.
So you think about it. Even think about the last 60 years in TV, what they've considered to be acceptable attire on TV commercials has changed. It's gotten less and less, right? We've become more and more sexualized as a society. And so again, not bad or good. I don't think it's good, but we are noticing those details in that story more than we are this other honor and shame charged language, is what I'm saying. And because of that, we're missing details. And we're also, I think by extension, missing some of the symbols. Like, why is it a covering? Why do we have a covering that's placed over us to cover our shame? It's to cover our, that we are restored in front of God, that we are dirty, we are, impure, we are unclean, and we do need a savior, versus this idea of God's already paid for my sins. I'm not dirty, I'm not unclean, because he's paid it all for me. You follow me? These are two different systems.
Yeah, well, like I think about Adam and Eve, right? Adam and Eve before they ate.
That's exactly right.
The fruit in the garden, they didn't understand, and they felt shame, right?
They did.
Felt, hey,
where are you?
naked before God. They felt shame.
Yeah, I mean that's the first. And nakedness, by the way, right now you start to think about nakedness in a different way.
Yeah.
Nakedness on remember Noah being found naked. It was his exposed nakedness that brought shame on the family. So you start to notice different things when you understand this is at play. Is what I'm trying to tell you. Right. Let me give you real quick here a story. I said, picture kind of a Mediterranean village, maybe first century Judea, and they're tight knit collectivist society. And I'm going to give you an example of the same thing being handled in two different societies. Okay, that way you can kind of get an idea. A young man, he's basically stealing something from his neighbor to feed a gambling habit. And this is again, it's a very tight-knit society where honor is tied to your family and also your family's name, its public reputation, like we talked about. And the theft isn't just a crime for these folks, it's actually a public shame. Okay, and it dishonors the thief's family. It would have ruptured the relationships that family had with other families in that village, and the shame really would have been something that the elders would have gathered publicly to discuss whenever they came to light. The goal wasn't primarily to prove the guilt or the innocence when they came together, like kind of in a courtroom sense, but to confront the shame. You brought dishonor on our name, on our community, and how do we restore the loyalty? The thief would have been very worried about losing what they call the lost face. You've heard this term before, right? I've lost face. Sometimes people would cover their faces because they're so shame in these societies. Even I read the story about a woman who her husband cheated on her, and she was the one that was covering her face because she was so shamed. She wasn't worried about the infidelity. She was worried about the shame it brought on her family more than the infidelity, the act itself. It's just totally different. And so he confesses openly. This thief, he makes restitution, maybe makes double, like Exodus 22, right? He pays back twice what he stole. The community celebrates his return with a feast, right? This would have been celebrated. They'd have been happy that he's back in the fold. The honor would have been restored. Relationships are healed now. He's back in the circle, right? Not because a penalty was paid or whatever, but because, the loyalty, he showed a public humiliation, right? He said he was sorry, he repented, and he's restored. Now, let's fast forward to our Western culture in a courtroom setting type thing. Like here in America, you have an individualistic, guilt and innocent society and culture. We're focused on the law that was broken, right? We're kind of honing in on that. Did he actually violate this statute or not? Is there, was he in good standing? Was he in good faith? Right? This kind of an attempt to get to motive. Evidence, there's prosecution, there's defense, prove guilty beyond what? A measure, a reasonable doubt. And the judge would have declared guilty. And he said he imposes a fine on him, he gives him some jail time. And that's the penalty. Once he's served, he's innocent again in the eyes of the law. And then, But what about the relationships? His neighbor, I mean, could his neighbor, oh great, you know, you went to jail for 16 months. Do you think he thinks I'm feeling better? Like, I want my stuff back. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I don't care about that really, you know. You know, maybe he resents him probably still, right? So the relationship's still ruptured in our Western, you know, culture. And so you see the difference here, right? The family still might have been estranged, still might have been upset with the guy. There's no public feast, right? You know, just a cold transaction. It's kind of like a justice, acquittal, or punishment, the penal substitution, right? The idea of kind of that, you know, that cold kind of calculated what do they call that? Transactional. But, you know, and the contrast here, you know, in honor and shame, the core issue is relationship restoration and public loyalty, kind of trusting the system again, right?
Yeah, you're hitting on something there interesting, Blake, because, you know, I've been doing more research on Christ's atonement, and you know, the idea that it's just transactional, you know, he does this and then you're okay. As I've begun to do this research, and I think you've looked in this too, there seems to be more about this relationship with Christ, that you want to emulate him, you want to be like him, and by being obedient, okay, that it's not just about, oh, he's my savior, he did it all for me. You've got to do some things too in order to show that relationship by being obedient to him, which the Church of God movement does push, different than the evangelical movement. What are your thoughts on what I'm saying there?
I've thought about this. I thought about the thing that we're missing is the aspect of honor and shame. Like, you know, it's not about did I do the thing or not do the thing. Did I honor the Sabbath day? This is also, we should have a conversation about honoring the Sabbath day and what it would have meant to them. What does honor the Sabbath day mean, right? And so, yeah, I think that there is this thing in the background of like, you said, do what he did, right? Take my yoke upon you of your own volition, right? Of your own accord, and do as I do, right? And learn of me is what he says, learn of me. Well, you know, if you attempt to learn and you don't do, you fail, you should feel ashamed. Now that's not bad. It's okay. You know, it's okay to fail and to feel ashamed, to be brought low, right? Hey, friend, when you come to the dinner table, don't place yourself at the head of the table. Place yourself at the foot of the table, then you'll be called up. It's a public shaming, right? If you were called out and pushed back. So there's, you know, and again, I think that to see what he did.
Exactly. Look at the fact that he was God and he became a lowly man and allowed himself to be shamed and spit upon. And as an example, that when we're in our humble state, that's the best time we can be worked with. That's the best time for a relationship, when you realize you're not all that. You know?
Well, you're not going to argue someone into the kingdom of God, logically. Okay? It is a relationship. And I think that relationship that's built upon trust and this idea, are you operating with integrity? Are you being honorable? So when you went under those waters of baptism, when you publicly confessed to the whole community here that you're now no longer that person, and then if you do backslide, do you feel shame? And you know, and so when we move past shame, right, a post-shame society, or beyond shame, we don't do that shaming thing, except for whenever it's a part of our ideology, right?
I think there is a lot of shame, like wrongly appropriated shame out there from like leftist ideologies and stuff. We see that occur.
Yeah, so I kind of corrected, you know, that we're post-shame. We're not. There's still shame. It's just about what we're more worried about. Are we more worried about dishonoring God, or we're more worried about, you know, hurting the environment? You know, that's just something that you would have.
Here's a question related to this from Life Lessons. It says, is God concerned about what others' opinions are of those that God has called? Because I guess maybe the idea is that shame and honor, that's something people think about you, right? So is it God cares about others' opinions, or what how would you answer that, Blake?
I would answer that in that credible, honorable individuals have, whenever they speak, respect from people, and so therefore people listen to that man or that woman. And if you don't have that respect, you don't have that kind of respect, holding someone in high regard because they preserve their honor with God and by extension the community, we typically listen to those people as though what they're saying is correct. I think that would be the only reason why God would be concerned about our opinions. Otherwise, he's just concerned about our relationship with him. I think that's his primary focus is on how we as individuals, and of course the individuals would say this, that's how I understand it. Again, that's, by the way, you can't escape it. You as a Westerner that's grown up in this culture are always going to have, you're predisposed to notice what this means to you versus how does this impact us first. But yeah, I mean, I think that idea of God is worried about our reputation and our opinion, essentially, in the way that we can forward the gospel. We're kingdom minded, right? So we want to look at this through a lens of always, how is this adding to our ability to glorify God in the kingdom versus will this bring shame and discredit my word, right? When you give your word to something, it only has the impact based on your relationship that you've built up, your credibility.
Right. Yeah, you know what? There have been some people within the Church of God movement who have done things that have been very shameful or sinful, and they kind of hurt the Church of God as a whole, right? Things that these people have done, people look at us and say, "How can you be a part of that church because of some of these things people have done?" So
Yeah.
I think of that as a leader myself. That like, man, I don't want to do anything that could bring shame, right, to the rest of the church because of my actions. So we have to, think of it that way as well, because it really has, some things people have done that, unfortunately, to the Church of God.
Yeah, no doubt, Jeff. I totally agree with you. I actually, well, I'm not going to get into what the things were, but
Yeah.
Friends or family members of mine brought it up to me that, oh, look at your leader here, pointing to that. Then there's some problem with the whole church,
Right.
If the leader had this issue. And again, I don't agree with that. I think everybody's responsible for what they do, but yeah, it can besmirch the whole character of an organization due to the fact that some of that is still here. It hasn't all gone away.
Yeah. We're still incomplete with it, and it's still kind of, it's taking its time. But I think it's like, I'm not going to get into it, but this idea of how long until that clears your name, right? There's a whole thing about how much time it takes, and it takes a long time. What is it? It's something ridiculous, like you can destroy your reputation in a matter of moments, but it takes a lifetime to build that thing. And to really understand that is your access point to making disciples of the nation. God is calling people. Yes, that is his prerogative. That's how he's going to do it. He's cast this thing out. But our marching orders are to make disciples of those nations. So he's told, at least Jesus told the disciples right then and there. He said, look, you go out and make disciples of all this nation. You make students of all these people. What do you mean students? Well, individuals that believe what you're saying when you come to them. Well, how are they going to believe what you're saying unless you have a good reputation? Why are you going to get a good reputation unless you try to defend your name, his name? Your actions should be aligned. They should also embody the character and the spirit of those things, right? Moving past letter to spirit, embodying the spirit, the essence of the agreement versus what was technically my rights, what can I technically get away with is kind of what we say in the West. What am I, absolutely on the hook for versus what is the right and honorable thing to do here? Well, no, I don't care about the honorable and the right thing to do. I just want to get the bare minimum of what's been required of me according to the law. It's like, well, that's a great attitude. No,
people in the West look for loopholes in the laws, don't they?
Yeah, my people too. Silverstein. Jewish. That we look at those contracts and we're like, right here. But we're tithing the mint leaves and all that. Just like getting really, granular, right? And we're talking this whole granular and atomizing. I think there seems to be this kind of. It's a very Hellenistic idea, by the way, that we started ending up with some of these things in the West. We can go through a whole deep dive on all that, how kind of our culture has become compelled with certain things because of where we've come from. But I got a couple things before we conclude. I can't believe we already. The reason why I'm talking about this is a couple things. One is Charles Gross says that very frequently, if you don't understand what it meant to them back then, you're going to have a hard time understanding what it means to us now in the scriptures. And he says, go to some pains to understand their culture, understand the things that would have been very common for them that they were dealing with. And so then if you understand their psyche and kind of what they're afraid of and what they're hoping for, fear and hope, those are two strong motivators. You'll understand some of their motivations and some of the challenges they have and how they would have read these scriptures, and then how that would have interfaced with their application. And then you can constrain for the variables, right, and transpose it onto our lives now as much as one can. And that's as good as it gets, man. I mean, that's about as good as it's going to get, as far as what it means and how you can apply those laws. And so handle the words of the Bible carefully, is what he would say. He said, look, don't inadvertently say something that's incorrect in the Bible and lay this at someone's feet and say, hey, look, you now have to be worried about tassels. You have to wear tassels, right? If you don't wear tassels, you're not getting in. And now these people are feeling ashamed about not wearing tassels when it's not, it's not there. Just to bring an example. I'm not saying it's for or against. It's just something that came to mind. If you don't, so he said, look, don't shame people inadvertently or have them shame themselves, because it's a powerful tool. God uses that tool. So he says, look, this is the reason why when you get up and you speak, it's very important to handle that word of God, correctly, let's say. So that's the motivation behind this, to not inadvertently. And so you do a little bit more time, a little bit more reading to make sure that you do get people's sound exegesis, exposition of what's going on in the scriptures. And so I liked how this dovetailed into the topic that you guys had about hell, and that there really would be a lot more emphasis back then on not worrying about, because look, the faith chapter, right? Hebrews 11 talks about all these guys that were operating what I consider to be honorable in the face of not receiving their promise. Let's say, there's these ideas that you're trying to look to the kingdom that's not here yet, and it's setting your hand now to the way that you should behave. And I think we're less transactional if we do that. We're going to be authentic. We're going to embody the spirit of something, which is what I think God's trying to get us to do, is have a heart for Him. To not be so, what am I technically required to do for salvation? Is this a salvational commandment? You hear this from time to time, and I'm like, man, it's like a terrible question. Go and do ye good. Well, how much, God? How much good do I have to do? No. Just go do ye good. Just go and get busy. Don't worry about it. It's going to come out in the mix, right? It's going to come out in the wash. It's a part of the process, you'd say, right, Mike? And so I think that kind of operating from more of that standard of worrying about dishonoring God's name in public for people is a push in a good direction for any church member. So I'm seeing a lot of stuff because I've been thinking about this topic for a while. I think it has a lot of its tendrils in a lot of different areas of a Christian's life. And again, it helps us understand the scriptures better, kind of the cautionary tale. The Prodigal Son story is another one, that example of restoring honor to the family's name. In the very beginning, he says, look, you might as well be dead to me. Give my inheritance, right? Kind of miss all of that. And we think about it as personal restitution with God, or being reconciled to God. It's like there's also a lot of language about restoring the family's honor.
You're right. I mean, the other brother was making it more about sin and innocence, it seems, where the father, it was like, hey, everything's getting restored now. We should be so happy about that. But the other brother was, he did this. He did
on this date, this time, he did that, and actually, this kind of individual who's, always, keeping tabs. Exactly. And
I have a question here. Coming in from what someone's watching. It says, at what point does living in shame become living a life of sin?
Living in shame, living a life of sin. So I think those are out of order. So I think that when you are living a life of sin, you should feel shame, right? I don't think living in shame is becomes so. The question probably something like, when does shame go too far? Because there is such a thing as public shaming without any kind of recourse, or kind of unabashedly publicly shaming someone over and over again for maybe, let's say, not real things is not good, right? That is also very damaging, and that's why I was like, look, this can go too far.
Some cults do that, right? Well, they'll where somebody, when they leave, and so they have nothing to do with them, and they don't communicate with the families and stuff like that.
They shun them.
They shun them is the word I'm looking for. Yeah. And shunning can be like that could be the wrong type of shame, is shunning people for the wrong reasons.
A cult, by the way. My definition of a cult is whenever any organization that tries to come between you and your family, or between you and God. An organization that tells you who you can and cannot call a family member, I consider to be mind control in a cult, or telling you how you, in your relationship with God, what that is. Because it's hard to say what organization is not a cult. All the best organizations these days are cults anyways. No, I'm kidding. But no, they're just, you need to have definitions for yourself about what you see. You know that this organization is clearly a cult.
Yeah.
How do you know? Well, I just get this feeling. It's like, no, there needs to be a litmus test here for you.
Yeah, different people have different definitions of what a cult is. But for me, it's kind of like what you're saying, something that comes between you and God when they don't need to be there. They're taking a position that's not seen in Scripture.
Yeah. Over time, the definition of cult has changed. I mean, early on, it just meant a certain system of belief. But as we've progressed and we've gotten into all these wacky religions out there, the connotation is that it's a negative concept now. At least one of the
words change over time, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So these ideas about Hebrews 12, that God, right? I mean, he basically he despised the shame of the cross, and so for the joy that it brought, that it was basically, and in that chapter he talks about that he restores the shame, right? He redeems it, and I think that it's important for understand that there's healthy shame. Okay, the correct reaction to it to sin, Romans 3:23, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God, is basically that we are to feel bad about it, right? It's not so difficult. I think the people who are individually trying to say to themselves, I shouldn't feel bad about that. Technically I had the right to that. This idea, if the word technically comes into your mind, you probably should say, that should be a red flag, for yourself.
No, I'll give you a great example of that. Driving down the road one day, and somebody cut me off. I was pretty angry in the moment, and upset. And then I caught myself and realized that that's not how I should be reacting to this. That guy made a mistake. What's the big deal? Let it go. But I felt a little shame there in the reaction that I had, the anger that was welling up, in the moment. Yeah. So
that's a second, anger is a secondary feeling, is what I've been told. And, what does that mean? Well, it means that there's something that caused you to be angry. And usually it's a level of shame, your own inability to act in the way that you've told people that you are reliable for, right? That you have broken your commitment, right? And you're mad about that. Well, it's okay. Well, how about you just do away with that and get to the root of it, which is actually that you feel a lack of capacity to honor your word, right, that you've given to God. You also gave your word, by the way, to the DMV. You wrote your name down. You signed a document telling them that you swear. This whole thing about swearing. There's a third commandment too about not taking his name in vain, which is, I think, about taking someone's name. There's a lot of honor and shame behind all that. But again, this is not the public standing, is what I'm trying to say here. The ancient Christian would have been very interested in how this affected the public or the community at large. They were part of the household of God. There were one stone, right, that was built with these other stones, or they were, according to Peter, the house of God. They're individual, yes, but we are together as one. And if one stone fails, right, they're all relying on the other one. So how is this going to affect the group. We could do that a little bit better, right? And you're also, whenever you see this kind of preservation of community, think about what's been happening over the last 10 or 15 years. We've become even more and more atomized and separated from one another. COVID ratcheted up that like wildfire. And a lot of people did not do so well with that whole COVID and separation, isolation, right? It took them for a ride, and that was just throwing gasoline on an already raging fire. I think of how Satan has divided and conquered us. Essentially, he's got us, people hanging out in their basements, not interacting with the community at all, isolating, maybe on online stuff. It's not really a good. That's not good for someone. You need to be around human interaction. You need to be around other individuals. And the scriptures are kind of written with all this as a given that you're going to be a part of a community. You're going to be a part of a tribal community, so to speak.
Yeah, there's a lot of scriptures on unity. It's important to God. Yeah.
Right.
And we aren't doing a good job of it.
Yeah. I mean,
no more shame.
Right. God is a family. God is a family. Our church is a family. And family is the closest community you can get, I think. And again, we should
it's a microcosm. Yeah,
consider it that way. So again, we're at the end of the program. So I know we only got the 1 year slides, but maybe we'll have to save those for another time. Is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I realized that I just want to kind of make sure to hit some of the major points about why this is interesting as an individual, why it's important to a CFG person, in CGI, because you do have an advantage being in the CGI about how this whole conversation is happening. Is we know about the idea of that there is a white throne judgment coming up. Judgment, right? There's an idea there that we're being judged. We are being judged. We should be operating in such a way that we feel is honorable, and to be quick to admit when you're wrong, especially in public. Show these people, show the young men what it looks like to be dishonored, to be humbled like David, and not go off and die. Mm-hmm. Not be dramatic and say, "Oh my gosh, I can't do this ever again. I got to, There's a sensibility to this thing. There's a way to integrate your shame. Let's say, right, that you feel bad, you feel dejected, you feel downtrodden, you feel like you can do better next time. You need to have some resolve to come back at this thing next time, better than ever. Versus, you see a lot of people whenever they have that kind of shame, they just get really taken out. They go away. They get shut down. They basically become unusable, right? Mm-hmm. No, God wants you to have a healthy level of tension that He's building in you with that to get you to move, to turn, to make an about face, that kind of, to repent and to not get dramatic about it, just to be correction, to correct the thing. He's going to forget it if you forget it, and move on, and get back to it. And that's where that grace comes in. That idea of grace is whenever we do fall down, because we're going to. Not about a penal substitution, not about, that you are in need of a Savior. And it's not about whether or not He paid it all for you per se. You know what there is to do. Go get busy, you know what I mean? And be worried about when you're not doing it the way that you think you understood it. Quit worrying about everyone else and the way that they understand these things. And have some what the Jews would call some chutzpah, some gall, and stand out. I've seen, a lot of young men who are blaming the day away. They're blaming everyone else. And they're waiting for someone to come whenever they finally get out on their own to fix everything for them, because they're not competent. They're incompetent. Maybe you should feel ashamed. Maybe you're not all you should be. There is a healthy degree of shaming someone to where they do, these young guys especially. And they're okay with ghosting their family when they get married at this point, right? They're okay with all these things that are very shameful behaviors. Mm-hmm. And so I think this really, as a society, is a good thing for us to consider, especially as Christians. And if you're in the CGI, I think you have an ability to share about this, that we're not worried about innocence and guilt as much as we are honor and shame, based on our understanding of what God's doing. And this is all pictured in his days, the holy days as well. There's a lot to this, but again, I would say don't publicly shame someone. Nathan did it. He probably is very tactful. You may see how he kind of set the stage for David to kind of, he set the trap and David went right into it. If you're going to shame someone, I would suggest to do it in private. Right, we talked about this in Matthew 18. Kind of take them aside individually, this thing that, by the way, your grievance should have baked into it a concern about how this influences the community, not you as an individual. You did this thing to me, wham. How about you did this thing that doesn't work for the group, and it doesn't help us to be more unified, and it's actually dishonoring God's name. They're going to know us by the love we have for one another, and this doesn't look very loving. You follow me? You hold this kind of concern with honor and dignity, and I think that's important. So this
be holy as I am holy.
Yeah, set aside. And I think there's a level of taking it seriously, and taking it seriously that men need to see right now, especially young men. They need to see that their male counterparts, or their elders, the people they look up to, have a sense of urgency. They have a sense of dignity. They have a sense of that they stand for something, and that I think it's a very important thing right now. I think young men are especially dying for something like this, that's deep in them. They feel it, that they need this sense of a calling that's bigger than themselves, and to honor that. This idea of battlefield honor and all that. These guys, but they don't have any battlefields right now. They have keyboards, and so they're like they're starving for adventure. And the Christian faith is an adventure if you're doing it right. And he says, look, if you're doing it right, there's going to be a lot of challenges. There's going to be a lot of moments for you to take the easy way out, but you don't, because you're called by my name, because you stand up for the innocent, and all of so I think that is where all this motivation came from. The conservatism movement with Charlie Kirk and all this, he was looking at these same things as well, getting back to being honorable men, and conserving that value set, and so I think that's also been a part of all this. And I know we went all over the place, but hopefully you felt like I gave you some ideas about why these are high level, two different societies, different, not wrong per se or right, but also helpful in understanding the scriptures a little better.
Yeah, I guess for me, I can think of now, like my relationship with God is, what can I do to bring honor to God and bring honor to his church? So that's a good way to think about it. And probably a correct way to think about it. So thank you for bringing that idea into the mix. So that's a good, I think it's good for us, hopefully good for our church moving forward. And you did a sermon about this as well.
And again, it's been on my mind, the last couple of years. Again, remember the program I did before this was on preterism, partial preterism, futurist, idealist. These ideas of how we read the scriptures. This is all a part of that. This is basically the preterist, right? I mean, again, understanding. If you're speaking to them back then and also to us now in this text, right? If it's both, you want to know what it meant back then to them, and that's a part of all of this. So, yeah, I think that not only is it correct, personally, generally you think the things you're talking about are correct. I could be wrong, but I think it's important to understand the scriptures, and you can basically get a better understanding of what it meant to them. I think it's a good look for us as a group, as a church. We're not so irrational as like kind of legalist. We have a heart for the scriptures. I think we're really drawing ourselves to God, and inside of that, you'll see really a lot of blessings. By the way, I mean, I promise you, the other side of that shame and being brought low is being honored, and that on the heels of that humility, don't resist the humility, don't resist the correction. It talks about in Hebrews 12, if I corrected them, if your earthly father corrected you, right? I'm gonna correct you too, man. You're gonna feel that pain. You're gonna feel that sting. But no, God's not gonna remove that shame. He's gonna restore it. He's gonna restore you and your standing. You just gotta stay strong. And so, yeah, guys, I appreciate the invite, and hopefully I'll be able to meet with you more often in 2026. But doing great things here by proving all things. I think it's another honorable thing to do. Prove these things. So, I'm going to be saying honor and shame, and my poor wife, she's like, good grief, can you give it a rest? Jeremiah's only 9. He doesn't need to be worried about honoring our family. You dishonor our family, Jeremiah. Yeah, good to see
Hey,
y'all.
thank you, Blake, for joining us today. That's been very, very informative. So again, we want to thank everybody who's been watching today for joining us as well. We hope you join us again on another edition of Prove All Things, and we'll see everybody again next week on Prove All Things. So goodbye to everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.